Monaco is the fourth most successful team in France, yet it has one of the tiniest stadiums, and even so, it's always empty. Few places on earth are less suited than the Principality for a football club with burning passion. To begin, it's a tiny place, with fewer than 40,000 inhabitants. And on top of that, only a handful of those 40,000 were actually born or raised in Monaco. Most of them are millionaire immigrants who don't care about football. At most, they still care for the club they supported as children, not the team from the Tex Heaven where they now reside. We can't even say Monaco's stands are packed with tourists, because most prefer to stay on their yachts or in the casino. And if they do venture out for a weekend, it's only to watch Formula 1. And what about the working class living around Monaco? Well, they support Nice or Marseille instead of a foreign team because Monaco is outrageously expensive. Its prices are hostile to the middle class, the one football fandom usually comes from. Literally, the only cheap thing in Monaco is the taxes. That's also why the club attracts young talents who never stay too long enough to grow roots. Monaco's players know perfectly well they're only there temporarily, and that's why they end up bottling it. In short, Monaco and sense of belonging are totally incompatible concepts, and therefore, the bond between club and fans is practically non-existent. Sporting Cristal. Since its foundation, Sporting Cristal has always been a club with strong financial resources, and having money in football is basic. With money, you buy good players. With good players, you win titles, and titles bring fans. But there's one thing money can buy: warming the chest. Sporting Cristal, unlike Universitario de Deportes and Alianza, the other two Peruvian giants, lacks that emotional fire that money can't purchase. One thing leads to another. Historically, Cristal players don't join the club out of love for the jersey, or even the beer, but simply seeking the financial stability that other clubs can't offer. Therefore, when it comes time to put their foot in, the tendency is to pull back. At the same time, their fans, used to the good life, don't know how to suffer or support the team through tough times. Think about it this way: if the fans don't mind supporting a club named after a beer, how could they sustain the kind of fierce loyalty required to build a deeper club culture rooted in geography or social identity? In Chile, Universidad Católica is the equivalent of Peru's Sporting Cristal. They even share the same colors. The only difference is that instead of representing a beer company, Católica represents the capital city's private university. And everyone knows all the stereotypes around private universities, which fit perfectly with a club often accused of being apathetic, of never sweating for the jersey, and of always shrinking at critical moments, just like Universidad Católica. For obvious reasons tied to their elite social origin, Católica is nowhere near stirring the passions that Colo-Colo or Universidad de Chile ignite in Chilean football. Universidad Católica can be defined with just two words: Pecho Frío. And even if they try to deny it, everyone in Chile knows it's always been that way. Starting with the foreign players who arrive with the impossible mission of trying to change the club's essence. When it comes to national teams, Colombians are the first to acknowledge with resignation that their team is Pecho Frío. Once again, the Colombian national team with the Pechito Frío. How is it possible we can close out games, bro? By this, understand that Colombian players often fail to step up when it matters the most. They fall short, they concede goals in the dying minutes, and they almost never win on penalties. Colombian clubs in the Copa Libertadores also carry the reputation of backing away from heated confrontations. In CONMEBOL competitions, Colombian teams have reached 15 continental finals and lost 11 of them. Thus, it's not easy to crown a single club as the most Pecho Frío in Colombia. Competition is fierce. Historically, the shame belonged to Deportivo Cali, better known by the rivals as Deportivo Casi, Deportivo Almost. But over the last 15 years, Independiente Medellin has taken that lead. 7 finals played, 6 finals lost. And if we're talking about the coldest, most opportunistic fanbase, look no further than Junior de Barranquilla. Maybe the real question should be, which team in Colombia is in Pecho Frío? In Brazil, they have their own term for players or teams with no fire in their beans: Pipoqueiro. In Brazilian Portuguese slang, Pipoqueiro means something like the popcorn guy, a player who doesn't give it all and tends to choke when everything's in their favor. In Brazil, the quintessential Pipoqueiro club has always been Botafogo. Yes, the same club that recently won the Brasileirão and the Copa Libertadores. Out of the 12 clubs considered giants in Brazil, Botafogo was the very last to win the South America's top tournament. And historically they've struggled mightily to win even 3 league titles. When Botafogo finally seemed cured of their legendary curse, Pachuca came along to return them to their usual state of heartbreak. By the way, despite what their name suggests, Fogo means fire. Botafogo doesn't just show coldness on the field, they show it in the stands too. Not even their legendary 2024 season prevented their stadium from having one of the lowest attendance averages in the entire Brasileirão. Cruzazul from Mexico exists in a different dimension altogether. Cruzazul isn't just a bitter team. Cruzazul doesn't simply choke. Cruzazul Cruzazulear. Sure, in recent years it's Monterrey and its fanbase who have earned the nickname Penguins due to their lack of passion both on the field and inside their freezing stadium, extending their title drought, losing finals at home one after another, despite spending heavily every year, has contributed to Monterrey becoming the trendy team when it comes to labeling a Pecho Frío club. But again, Cruzazul is on another level. When they finally won the title in 2021, they broke their curse, but nothing changed deep down. Their essence, their DNA remained intact. Cruzazul is the team that always finds an even more ridiculous way to lose. The team that blows 4-goal leads if necessary. The team that can lose even with a player advantage. The one that scores a last-minute goal only to concede in the final play. The team that simply can't stop losing to their bitter rivals, Club America. They are the 3rd most popular team in Mexico, yet their fanbase doesn't carry much weight. That said, few, if any, teams worldwide have transcended to the point of having their names submitted to the Royal Spanish Academy. Too bad the verb Cruzazulear Cruzazulio itself and didn't pass the final filter to be officially included in the Spanish dictionary. In English, there's a perfect equivalent for this idea. The fully football-related term, Spursy. The word has been on the waiting list for the prestigious Collins Dictionary since 2019. But whether it officially makes it or not doesn't matter. Spursy is already installed in every urban dictionary across the British Isles, and it's synonymous with bitter, pecho frío, soft, fragile, disappointing, etc. Obviously, Spursy comes from Tottenham Hotspur, a wealthy club full of high expectations that every single season has a promising moment when it seems like this year it will happen, only to crash halfway through and show they'll fall short once again. But being Spursy isn't exclusive to Tottenham anymore. For example, these days with their leaky defense and inconsistency, Manchester City has started to look a little Spursy. When Nottingham Forest misses clear goal chances, they're being a bit Spursy. When Manchester United collapses at the end of the games, they lose because they're Spursy. If Fulham plays well but still ends up losing, that's a classic Spursy match. And the England national team, after losing 2 straight Euro finals on penalties, is probably the most Spursy team out there, only winning something once 60 years ago. In fact, even Arsenal, Tottenham's classic rivals, have become more Spursy than Spurs themselves. That's how deeply ingrained the concept has become. Sometimes the concepts of pecho frío and bitterness go hand in hand. Usually a pecho frío team also has a bitter fanbase. But in Spain, specifically in Madrid, it's completely the opposite. Real Madrid as a team has a boiling chest that pulls them through even the worst situations, often defying logic. However, their home fans at the Santiago Bernabeu are the exact opposite. They only make noise when there's a goal, and they turn against their own team at the first sign of trouble. Real Madrid has an ultra bitter fanbase, but on the field they're the least pecho frío team in existence. Meanwhile, Atletico de Madrid has the loudest and most loyal fans in Spain. No matter how many failures they endure, they never stop believing. They never turn their backs on the players. There's no club less bitter than Atletico. But on the field, lots of fight, lots of talk about grit and passion. But in reality, they can spend an entire lifetime without winning at Camp Nou. And they just can't beat Real Madrid on the European stage when it matters the most. And yes, it's true. Barca and Madrid have more resources. But it's also true that when crunch times comes, those two giants don't freeze up like Atletico, the club historically known as El Pupas. The Bundesliga's equivalent to Atletico Madrid is Borussia Dortmund, but on steroids. Their fans will endure everything and anything, but on the pitch, Dortmund inevitably chokes during every derby, every final, as if they are mentally defeated before the match even starts. Unlike most cases we've talked about, Dortmund wasn't born pecho frío. They're just stuck in a long-lasting phase they can't seem to escape. Since Jurgen Klopp left the club 10 years ago, Borussia Dortmund has been unable to find leaders, either on or off the pitch, capable of melting the ice that now surrounds around their yellow-shirted players, a massive contrast with their passionate, gigantic fanbase, maybe the greatest in Europe. And who's the saddest team in Italy? The one closest to Atletico de Madrid and Borussia Dortmund, that team with a passionate fanbase but condemned to eternal frustration, is Roma. Although others, with good reason, might argue that the real bitter club in Italian football is Juventus, because, well, their fans are horrible, and no team at continental level has been more pecho frío than them. Still, a club that has won so many Scudetti doesn't quite fit the Spursy definition. Now, if there's one team that's truly a Spursy, Pipoqueiro, used to Cruzazulearla, or as they say in Italy, and not right, Squadra senza palle, it's Fiorentina. Senza palle is a wonderfully crude Italian phrase that means no balls, or simply spineless. And Florence, a city historically more artistic than militaristic, is the perfect home for a football team that's always been a little bit soft. Fiorentina's tifosi are so bitter that their own directors mock them every time Juventus comes knocking with an offer to steal their favorite players. And the team, it's so bothered that it can even win a final of the UEFA Conference League. The fact that Fiorentina has finished as runners-up in that minor competitions twice in a row is pure poetry. Poetry of the saddest kind. Independiente and VELÉZ. It doesn't matter how much some teams win today, or how much other ones decades ago. It doesn't matter how many fans a team brings to the stadium, or how loudly they cheer. In Argentina, Independiente and VELÉZ Sarsfield have had the word bitter engraved onto their reputations. And there's no way they're shaking it off, not even by complaining to the AFA, as Independiente famously tried to do a few years ago. If there's anything more bitter than suing your rival for calling you bitter? As for VELÉZ Sarsfield's fans, the phenomenon is the exact opposite of what happens with Borussia Dortmund in Germany. In VELÉZ's case, on the pitch, the team has always been fiery, passionate. In the stands, however, they've built a reputation for being professional level Pecho Frío.